try to keep that in mind when answering questions. Even, because even like some of the old schools, like, oh goodness, that's a lot of typing. Yeah.
All right. Oh, you may be seated. Oh, we're back on the record. Your screen is blank.
Yes, he's pulling it up.
It's updated.
He's pulling it up, Your Honor.
That's
It's
fine.
coming up. You may have one moment. Okay. May I approach the screen?
You may.
Okay. Can you zoom into this area here, please? The agent Fryman, with regards to where it says Zestimate updated,
Yes, ma'am.
what is the date there?
12/03/2010.
And does that give you any indication as to when the search on the iPad and the iPhone would have had to be done?
It was either on or after that date.
Of December 3rd, 2010?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And can you go back up to the address, please, on the same screen? Agent Fryman, the 4849 Manjette Court. Are you aware of whose address that is?
I was later told that that was the victim's address.
Can you go to, please, the home sales bookmark screen? can you zoom in on the first part of the files comment, just that whole section there? Thank you. Agent Fryman, just to be clear, on each of these bookmarks where it says created date and modified date and access date, are those dates associated at all with when the user used the iPad or the iPhone to search it? What are those?
No, ma'am. So again, just as a reference, sometimes we have to use certain tools that can carve out or find specific remnants of files that used to be visible to the user. And in this case, we always use a copy of the original, so we're not altering anything on the original. And again, once we carve that out, we're saving it to a new place on our forensic machine. This particular item was carved and saved to a folder utilizing one of the tools, so it was taking it from the original image itself and placing it in that folder. So during the process of my forensic examination of one or both of these items, that's when that image was saved over to the folder and then later reviewed. The items were then put from a folder into another forensic program to make it easier to put it on a CD, to make it more usable, to be able to point and click and find specific categories of items.
Thank you. Okay. If you can go now to States Exhibits 109 and 110. Before we talk about each of them individually, give the jurors an idea of what they are in general.
So,
would it be easier if we had one up on the screen for you to explain?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If you can put the first one up in States Exhibit 109. Which is the recovered map tiles. Okay. Looking here at part of States Exhibit 109, can you explain to the jurors what this is and what this means?
So even in the most basic forms of the paper copies of maps, they're always set in like what we would call a tile or a grid. It's a specific area that it covers. And each one of those adds up to the entire map or an area of a map. Same thing electronically. The tiles here specifically that Google uses is a way to represent each block. Sometimes when we're looking at something, if we zoom in too quick, it may take a while to render, to show clearly what we're looking at or backing up and things like that. But the tiles themselves are specific areas of a map. And when I examined both of these items, I was able to recover items that, specific tiles that were appeared to be deleted because I did not find them in their entire context. And so the smaller representation is actually the tile that I recovered.
Can he, Your Honor, may he step off the stand?
You may.
Thank you. Agent Fryman, would you mind stepping off? And may I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. Okay. Let's talk. So, for the jurors, let's talk about what is this smaller tile here that's going to appear in these maps.
Yes, ma'am. So this specific here is a tile representation.
Corner, if you can use it, especially.
It's right there.
Makes it easier for them. That way they can see like where your point does it extend out.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's not it. Wait a minute, that's a silver point.
Here we go.
If you step over there.
Oh, I see. Yes, sir. Got it. Thank you, sir. It's the other point.
Yeah, the other point.
Using the other pointer, what are we looking at there in the small portion of the screen?
Yes, ma'am. So in this particular instance, this is a representation of a tile that I was able to recover. And again, when I initially looked into this, analyzed some of the data, I was trying to get some information based upon where the incident happened, Dunwoody Prep and the daycare center and the Dunwoody area and things of that nature. And so I began to notice on the recovered tiles a pattern that represented the what this would be as an entire view or a more entire view of the map that I recovered here on this specific small piece or tile here. So for instance, this map representation may show maybe more of this area and cut off here, for example, but that tile still would be in this place. So it was a representation of the area, specifically in and around Dunwoody.
Okay. And can you go to the next map, please? Okay. Now, what are we looking at here? Still in States Exhibit 109 at the second page. May I approach, Your Honor?
Right.
With regards to, let's just be clear, is this the portion here, the top small portion, is that the portion that you recovered?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what are we looking at? And are these red arrows, what are they indicating?
Yes, ma'am. So, again, this is a representation of a file that is starting to degrade. Other parts of it is unrecoverable. So this specific area here was recoverable, and this is the remainder of the tile that's starting to degrade. Something else may be writing over it or utilizing that space in this specific image. The red lines was a way for me to assist in the investigation to show or depict where these points line up or represent on the actual larger map or a complete map, if you will. So again, these are the tiles or representation of some of the tiles that were recovered, and this one in particular just shows some degrading effect where something else is writing over this, because this is in dry free space or what we had discussed earlier, unallocated, or what I testified earlier, unallocated space. This is still recoverable to a certain extent. Like the other one was fully recoverable, that tile. This one was partially recoverable, but I was able to link it up with other points from the actual full map or a map that would be complete.
And looking at this, what area is shown in this? Once you put that recovered portion here into the map and figure out where it goes, what area are we talking about that this search with using that tile was originally looking at?
This, all the tiles that were represented that were recovered were in and around Dunwoody area.
Okay. Can you go to the next one, please? Okay. And looking at this one also in States Exhibit 109, is that going to be the same thing, still the Dunwoody area?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And again, just to be clear for the jurors, these lines here going across this recovered tile, what do those indicate?
Again, a degrading of the actual full image to be able to be fully recovered. That something has written over there, whether it's memory, whether it's another file that used it at one time, or whatever. The image, most files have some sort of header or beginner to say this is what this file is. And many of the files that we're able to recover have an ending area. Most of them, or specific sizes that go with them. And in trying to recover this, it said this is the size of this, even though some of it is degraded or written over now, so it's not recoverable.
Can you go to the next screen, please? Okay, once again, are we still looking at more map tiles in that same Dunwoody area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you go to the next screen, please? Okay. Are we looking at, what are we looking at here?
Again, the same area.
Okay, still in Dunwoody?
Yes,
Can I
ma'am.
approach again, Your Honor?
You're right.
Thank you. Can you go to the next one, please? And what area is this located?
Again, same Dunwoody area.
Okay. Can you go to the next one? Okay. Go to the next one. This, I'm assuming, is the same area as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you go to the next one, please? Okay. Now, looking in this map, are you able to see any of the street? Let's just talk to the jurors a little bit about some of the streets that we're talking about here. What are the main streets that we're looking at?
From the map tile itself, or the entire?
The entire tile. Once you fit that recovered map tile into the bigger map, what is the bigger map that was being looked at?
Yes, taking the tile and putting it in where it fits, or where it should be. The entirety of it is so it's still Dunwoody area, and you have the Mount Vernon Road and Chambly Dunwoody Road
Okay.
area.
And do you see, are you able to see in this map anywhere on there where Dunwoody Prep is located?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you point that out for the jurors?
Yes, ma'am. Right.
Can you go ahead and zoom in on that? So this map was part of a bigger map that included Dunwoody Prep?
Yes.
And is that going to be the same type of thing as we go through, if we were to go through each of these map tiles? Are they all in and around that same Dunwoody area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You can have a seat. Thank you. Permission to approach, Your Honor?
Okay.
Agent Fryman, I'm going to show you States Exhibit 111 and 112. You can take a look at those and let me know if you recognize those.
Yes, ma'am.
And do States Exhibit 111 and 112, do they accurately reflect the data that you were able to extract from the iPad and the iPhone?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, state tender States Exhibit 111 and 112.
Any objection to 111 and 112?
No objection.
111 and 112 is a middle without objection. You may publish it to the group if you wish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Starting with States Exhibit 111, Agent Fryman, can you take a look at that and let the jurors know what was that search that you located?
So this one in particular, I was asked if there was anything dealing with therapist or therapist confidentiality, and I was able to locate this specific item.
Can you zoom in on that, please, on States Exhibit 111? Okay. And when we look at this, there's a lot there. What are we looking at specifically, or what, as you, as the expert with this, when you look at this, what are you able to see was the search that was done with regards to States Exhibit 111?
Yes, ma'am. So, again, going back to previous testimony, the therapist %20 confidentiality %20 law would show up specifically as therapist confidentiality laws.
Okay. And so would that have been the actual search term that was, let's say, Googled?
Yes.
So, okay. Okay. Can you go to States Exhibit 112, please? And what are we looking at in States Exhibit 112? What were you able to see in States Exhibit 112?
This one in particular, again, was there was a mention of possible police being able to trace cell phones, or if it can be done. So I was able to actually locate specifically a search that said, "Can police trace cell phones?"
Okay. And was that something that was done utilizing the iPad and the iPhone, or the iPhone?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a date on that item?
Yes, sir. So if I may clarify
You may.
something on this, sir. So these two particular items are specific examples of being able to just take the raw data. A lot of the bookmarks and had been done at that point. These were some final things that they were interested in. So these were not bookmarked, or would be in a situation that would be a better or a nicer view or a clearer view. These two particular items so would show a sweeping of that data, and the way that computers work, and they try to save space when they're doing presenting their data. So a lot of the dates, even in the dates that show the bookmarks specifically, show what's called a Unix timestamp, which is a series of numbers. Sometimes it's 10 to show milliseconds. Sometimes it's seconds, which would be 9, a series of 9 numbers. In this particular case, Your Honor, for the one that we are looking at, the date is specifically represented as the 129-3156-424. And when you take the time to actually interpret that, this one in particular was searched on, I believe, December 23rd of 2010. So there's a way to convert that into human readable form, sir.
Right.
And in most text messages and things like that, or a lot of times, that's how the date and time is in the system. But when you're looking at your phone and you're scrolling through, when was that call, when did I get that email or whatever, you are seeing the human readable form or the interpreted date. And so in doing the course of this forensic analysis, I had taken the time on the bookmarks to actually interpret the date based upon my expertise in that and the ability to do that, and with tools to validate that, and put it in the bookmark form. And these two particular items were, like I said, latter part of the interest in specifically looking for.
And with regards to, can you go back to the previous search regarding therapist confidentiality? Now, are you able to determine a date on this one as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And again, the date was represented by the 129-169-0472, and I believe that one was December 3rd or 6th. I believe it was the 6th,
Okay.
December 6th.
That's all the questions that I have, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Hanson, you may cross-examine if you wish.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Let's start with the last two dates that you just testified to. Those were both after the shooting, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And ma'am, if I may clarify, was that the very last two exhibits that we're talking about?
Yes.
The 111 and 112?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, then yes.
Now, do you have your report up there?
I do not know, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to be asking you, referring to your report as opposed to those papers. Would it be helpful for you in order to refresh your memory to have a copy of that report?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Thank you. Ma'am, is this yours?
Is that appear to be a copy of the report?
I was looking through it, sir, and I found this. And just wanted to make sure.
Now, the only items you were given was the iPhone and the iPad, correct?
For this particular matter, yes, ma'am.
Yes. And so you weren't given any other computers?
Not for this specific time, no.
Okay. And the iPad and the iPhone aren't linked to another computer. They wouldn't show searches that were done on another computer, would they?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Okay. In other words, if he's got a home computer that he uses, an iPad and an iPhone, are they linked so that when you search the iPad, you will find searches on the home computer, or you'll only find searches actually done on that pad or on that phone?
In particular, they can link up. It depends on the device. And again, in previous testimony, there were other items that obviously I have examined, particular to this entire case.
Okay. But the examination that you did on the iPhone and the iPad, did it show searches done on any other device?
No.
Now, you were in examining the phone and the pad, you were able to determine the date that those were purchased, correct?
The approximate date, yes, ma'am.
And referring to page 9 of your report, the iPhone was purchased on April 12th of 2010? Or that was your best estimate?
Yes, ma'am.
And the iPad was purchased on July 26th of 2010?
Yes, ma'am.
So the searches and the information that you found you would only find searches that were done after those dates, correct?
Yes, that's possible, yes.
So if he had done a search on suicide or a suicide attempt in February, it would not show up on these two devices, correct?
February of 2010?
Of 2010.
Yes.
Okay, looking at page 4 of your report, you were asked to look for the term suicide, correct?
As part of the investigation and part of looking through certain terms, for example, if I may, gun. Looking through gun, I noted some other hits that came up, specifically, for instance, like poisoning, things like that. So when I'm doing my analytical work, I'm trying to figure out where that comes into play. Specifically to this. So other terms were developed out of searches that were recovered and found in and around the items that were located during one search.
So suicide is basically the category, and then you found specific terms under that category.
Yes, ma'am. So the terms are trying to give an overview of what that specific bookmark would entail. It's not just the word overdose. There may be other words specific to that or in and around that.
Okay. And basically you're limited by what terms you can come up with, what terms you can think to look for, correct?
Limited in...
Well, in what's in your report, there could have been a search for maybe some obscure drug that you didn't think to search for. I mean, you're only going to show things that you think to look for, correct?
Well, not necessarily. So specific to this case, I'd say there was probably over 50 search terms that were used or utilized. Mm-hmm. This is a summative of what, again, to narrow it down to specifics or that things that may be relevant to the case or believed to be or stated that they're relevant to the case that take out some of the other stuff that's not necessarily, believed to be pertinent.
Okay. So basically, you came up with 50 variants or 50 things that you thought could exist within the category, but there could be other terms beyond that that you just didn't think to look for, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
And you found a search for Darvocet, suicide, correct?
Yes.
And you found a search for Lost All Hope Leading Suicide Resource?
If that is represented in the category of suicide, then, and it's in the report, yes.
Okay. Do you know what type of site that was? Did you check on what site that was?
No.
Looking at page 4, there was a search for overdose of Percocet?
Yes.
And overdose and death, how many pills does it take to overdose?
That's summative, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what was...
When you use the term summative, what are you referring to?
So there may be, yes, sir, Your Honor. So under the overdose, under that bookmark, there may be other ones. These are examples of some of the terms that were found utilizing or containing the word overdose as well. And that's why I said et cetera. Like there's other search terms that are represented in the bookmark or that could be presented that were not just for sake of just, again, trying to narrow it down or what may or may not be pertinent at the time.
So basically there were other searches in that category and you just didn't list all of them?
They may not all be listed, yes, ma'am.
And what was the date of that search?
Which search, ma'am?
The Percocet?
I would have to refer back to see if there's one. I mean, I think there's a couple of them that said Percocet, but I would have to refer back to that bookmark specifically. The first known date was November 20th of 2010 that I could locate.
Okay.
for overdose.
And going back to page 3, there was a search reference to nicotine poisoning,
Yes.
and that was actually on August 24th, 2010, correct?
Or nicotine. Again, there was nicotine poisoning, nicotine overdose, etc. So anything that tied to nicotine, the very first reference was back in August 24th, 2010.
Okay. And you also recovered an email from Andrea Sneiderman, correct?
If it was recovered or it was actually in the full state, I believe so, yes. There was a bookmark about an email, yes.
Okay. And do you remember the email on January 3rd asking to meet with Mr. Newman at work the next day on January 4th?
Yes, I believe. I do recall that conversation of saying that she'd be coming into the office or would like to come into the office and would like to meet, yes.
Okay. And he told her he wasn't going to be there?
I
Are
believe.
you asking him, is the email in front of him so you can read? I mean, are you asking him to, from his memory, to recall an email from 6 years ago? Did he read it?
Well, I think he's reviewed his results more recently than that. Is that correct?
I do recall that email, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir, I do recall that email. The exact contents, I can summarize to say there was a conversation that appeared to take place that said, I'm coming into the office to meet some of the other colleagues. I'd like to meet with you as well. And then there was a reply saying, I believe something of the effect that I won't be in. But the exact phrasing and things, I couldn't recall off the top of my head. I can summarize based upon my recollection of that.
Now, is that email in front of you? Is that in the report?
No, sir. No, it's not in this report.
Go ahead.
Recollection of that.
Now, is that email in front of you? Is that in the report?
No, sir. No, it's not in this report.
Go ahead.
The Zillow searches, did you look to see if there were Zillow searches of other addresses?
I don't recall.
So at this point, there's no way for you have no memory on whether there were searches of other addresses beyond those two?
At this time, I don't, no.
I'm going to show you what I'm marking as Defense Exhibit 1. Or, I'm sorry, 2. Can you tell me what that is?
It appears to be page 5 of 12 of my report that's in its entirety here.
Okay. And does that list the calendar information, or what birth dates are stored in that computer or that pad?
It's a representation of part of the calendar? Yes.
Okay. And does it show what birthdays were saved in that pad?
Yes.
Okay. Just give me 1 minute.
You may.
And
We're back on the record.
is that document a true and accurate reflection of the birth dates that you found on the pad?
You mean, are these 9 items as they appeared in one or both of the items?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I would offer into evidence Defense Exhibit 2.
Any objection to D2?
Your Honor, the only objection that I have no objection specifically to page 5. I would just ask that it is page 5 of a 12-page report. She admit the entire report into evidence rather than just one page from the report.
Well, I overrule that particular objection as long as this.
Was another part of the calendar, and this one was part of a syncing, if you will, of Mr. Newman's Gmail account. And that's why it says up here, www.google.com/0 calendar information. So these were only a part of his @gmail.com account. So these 9 represented there. I did find 2 other references to calendar, which are in the CD exhibit, represented in there for both the iPhone and the iPad in there as well.
Okay. So what are the birthdays that you found that you listed in your report? Can you just read those?
You want me to read all 9?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So Mommy and Ronnie birthday, 3/13/2011. Andrea birthday, 5/20/2011. Relly birthday, 8/18/2011. Sophia birthday, 8/24/2011.
Okay. And are you aware of who Sophia is?
Only at some point later on was I aware of who Sophia was.
But at this point, you're aware that that's Andrea's daughter?
Yes.
Keep
Yes,
going.
ma'am. Monique birthday, 9/19/2011. Tom and Lee birthday, 10/5/2011. Ian birthday, 10/17/2011.
And at this point, are you aware of who Ian is?
No. No, and let me make sure that I'm clear, is that there's 2 here that were bolded. I knew, obviously, Andrea's name for Andrea Sneiderman, and I believe I recognized at least the daughter's name through conversation. I knew they had a son. I didn't know the son's name. That's why it wasn't bolded here in particular, even at that time.
Okay. So you just referred to, you knew they had a son. Are you now aware that Ian is Andrea's son? Or?
Yes.
That was my question. Now are you aware of who he is?
Now I am, yes.
Keep going.
And then Addie birthday, 10/31/2011, and Poppy birthday, 11/01/2011.
Thank you. And those were all of the recurring dates that he had set up through his Google calendar.
It
correct?
appeared to be.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any redirect? Is that yes, no?
No, Your Honor, I do not.
All right. Lawyers may, special agent, please, be released and excused from the subpoena. Do you want him to remain on the stand?
Your Honor, he can be excused.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, you're free to go. Have a good day.
Yes, sir,
Drive
Your Honor.
safe.
Thank you.
All right. Call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, the state calls. State calls Dr. Duncan, Your Honor.
All right. And lawyers, these exhibits that are on the witness stand, are they going to be used for the next witness?
No, Your Honor, may I remove them?
Well, just gather them up and bring to the court before they're going to admit into the record. You gather them up.
Thank you.
Go ahead and raise your right hand.
Yes, sir.
Do you solemnly swear to affirm that the testimony shall give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Make lawyer again. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Stephen with a V. Frank Dunton, Dunton, MD.
And Stephen Dunton, how are you employed currently?
I'm currently the medical director of the Montgomery and Huntsville Medical Examiners offices within the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences.
And back in November of 2010, how were you employed?
I was the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner of DeKalb County, Georgia.
All right. Now, how long have you been a medical examiner for?
26 years.
Can you tell the jury what the function of a medical examiner is?
The medical examiner is a physician, usually a forensic pathologist, who is trained to determine the cause of death and the manner of death in persons who die from violence or persons who die suddenly and unexpectedly.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about the education and the training that one has to obtain to become a medical examiner?
Yes, sir. I attended Emory University as an undergraduate and graduated in 1978 with a bachelor's degree. I finished 4 years of medical school at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, received an MD in 1982. I trained as a pediatrician for 4 years before I changed specialties, and then trained in anatomic and forensic pathology for 4 years. I'm board certified in pediatrics, anatomic pathology, and forensic pathology.
Where have you worked previously? As I know you listed Alabama where you are now.
Yes, sir.
And you listed DeKalb County. Other than those two locations, where have you been employed or worked as a medical examiner?
I've worked in Fulton County, the GBI State Crime Lab, Gwinnett and Cobb counties. I've also worked in Buffalo, New York.
Approximately how many autopsies have you performed?
Almost 7,500.
7,500?
Yes, sir.
All right. How many times have you testified in court concerning those autopsies?
Almost 500 times.
And on those 500 times that you testified in court, can you tell the jury whether or not you were accepted as an expert when you testified?
I was.
Your Honor, this time I would offer Dr. Stephen Dunton as an expert in the area of forensic and
Pathology.
Pathology.
Forensic pathology.
Yes, sir.
Any objection? No. All right, he'll be considered as an expert in the field in forensic pathology.
I want to talk to you about November the 19th, 2010. Did you perform an autopsy on Rusty Sneiderman?
I did.
All right. Was there any evidence of any pre-death medical treatment on the body of Mr. Sneiderman?
Well, he had undergone some heroic measures to try to rescue him after he was injured. I believe that he was essentially dead on arrival at the hospital.
Could you give me just a second, please?
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. Go back on the record.
And I think your testimony was that he was essentially dead on arrival at the hospital?
Yes, despite maneuvers that had been performed on him.
All right. Did you create a diagram or a chart as part of your medical files?
I did.
All right. And would that diagram or chart assist you in your testimony today, explaining
Yes, sir.
what you did to the jury?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Dr. Dunton, I have shown you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit number 113. If you could take a look at that and tell me if you recognize it.
I do.
How do you recognize it?
This is a 4-view body diagram that I prepared that depicts the various gunshot wounds received by Rusty Sneiderman, the gunshot wounds I documented during my autopsy.
Is it in the same or substantially the same condition as it was when you created it back in November of 2010?
Yes.
At this time, the State would offer State's Exhibit number 113 into evidence.
Any objection? No objection. All right, 113 is without objection. May publish it to the jury if you wish.
Could we bring that up, please? And Dr. Dunton, I'm going to hand you this, and if you could, Your Honor, may I have permission to step down?
Yes, you may come down and use the corner.
Step down and use the pointer, and I'm going to ask you some questions about your diagram. But what I want to do is I want to, start here, and let's talk about the specifically about the victim's injuries, and just walk us through them and what you found.
Yes, sir.
I was able to determine that Mr. Sneiderman had received 5 gunshot wounds. I ordered them 1 through 5 only for convenience, working from top to bottom. It's not meant to imply the order in which the gunshots occurred. They may have occurred in this order, but they may not have. The one that I call gunshot wound number 1 involved the left side of his neck, just under his jaw. The bullet entered at this location, passed from his left to his right, in a downward fashion, slightly front to back. As the bullet traveled through his neck, it struck his cervical spine, the spine and the neck at what's called the 6th cervical level, and cut through the spinal cord. At that location, it continued in a rightward fashion in his body. It went through his right scapula, which is the shoulder blade. It stopped under the skin of his back, on the right side, and to the outside.
Before we go to wound number 2,
Then the bullet was recovered under his skin in this location.
all right, before we go to wound number 2, can you tell us whether or not that particular gunshot or that the wound from that gunshot would have been fatal?
Not necessarily. It may have been. There was a lot of bleeding associated with that. Any wound at the cervical spinal cord is potentially fatal, but it isn't necessarily. It would have left him paralyzed had he survived.
Okay, proceed.
The one that I call gunshot wound number 2 enters the right center part of his chest in this fashion. This gunshot also passes from his left to his right in a downward and front to back fashion. This bullet goes through the liver, goes through the diaphragm on the right side, goes through the lower part of the right lung, goes through his 10th rib in the back, and stops under his skin in the back on the right side. I'll tap that in the back.
He's gone.
Thank you. And that bullet stopped under his skin in this location.
In which location can you point again?
Here.
All right. All right, take us to the next gunshot wound.
The gunshot that I call number 3 enters the upper central part of his abdomen here. This one also passes from his left to his right in a downward and front to back fashion. It goes through his intestine and what's called the mesentery that lies between the loops of intestine, carries blood vessels to the intestine. That bullet continues through the right side of his body and exits the body, creating an exit wound on his right abdomen, which is located here.
To the next wound, doctor.
All right, the one that I call number 4 enters the right part of the abdomen in this location, to the right of the navel, the umbilicus. This wound is a little different in that it passes from his right to his left, instead of left to right like the others. This one also goes through his intestine and the mesentery, and this bullet exits the lower part of his left back, just above his pelvis. Here.
Our next wound, doctor.
And the one that I call number 5 is a grazed gunshot wound, just below the left elbow, kind of on the inside of his arm. A grazed gunshot wound is one that strikes the skin going sideways. It barely makes a wound at all. It's very superficial. It's confined to the outer part of the skin, and that bullet continues, so that one is gone.
You can have a seat for a second again. Doctor, can you tell us whether or not during the course of performing the autopsy, you took any photographs or you had any photographs taken of Mr. Sneiderman?
I did, yes.
All right, and can you tell us why you do this?
Documentation purposes. It's much easier to share the information with others if we have photographic evidence.
Would it assist your testimony if we took a look at those photographs and you explained some of the wounds and what you found?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Go ahead.
If you've seen it, correct? All right.
I am showing you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit number 114, 115, 116.
Yes, I recognize these.
And how do you recognize those?
These are photographs taken of Mr. Sneiderman as I examined his body at the initial part of the autopsy, but before any incisions were made by me.
Are those photographs a fair and accurate representation of how Mr. Schneiderman's body appeared when you did the autopsy?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would offer into evidence State's Exhibit number, and if the Court wishes, I can go through every number again.
Yes, if you could go each number so the record's clear.
Yes, sir. State's Exhibit number 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, and 127.
Any objection to 114 through 157?
Can I just look?
Oh, you got right. Look at it. You may look at it more.
No objection, Judge.
All right, 114 through 127 submitted without objection. Ladies and gentlemen, with the assistance of Deputy Garrett, we're going to give you your 10-minute break. And Deputy Garrett, have him back in the box in 10 minutes. All right.